I'm lucky enough to be sitting here at Blizzcon with the head, the chief, the number one of Splyce, Marty Strenczewilk. You know what? You got to tell me, how was that?
That was actually not bad. That was not bad.
Was it correct, though?
98%, which is, you know what, you can't go over 100% in life, can you? 98% is pretty good.
Listen, I've got a hard-to-pronounce name, too. I want to get there, okay? From one hard-to-pronounce name to the other, you got to tell me 100%.
Well, my name is Marty, and that's all you need. Do you meet any other Martys here?
You're being very difficult right now. So we're here at BlizzCon. Splyce had some pretty solid representation. Unfortunately, I'm talking to you just after TY was knocked out. And traditionally in esports, if a player has been knocked out of a tournament, then you know to never approach them. You want to let them be in the zone. And although you're not a player, you're still CEO, and you still have some sort of connection to the players. You have some sort of bond, I'm sure. Is it difficult for you at all to be conducting business and to, I mean, you were so on the go just even walking over here. Is it hard for you after you take a big loss like that to kind of keep things going and not kind of check emotionally into that sadness?
So I think if you own a sports team, and I say sports team because I mean any kind of sports team, you're competitive by nature, and so you want to win everything. Mm-hmm. I don't like losing anything. I don't like losing in any single game ever, no matter how meaningless it is, because that's the nature of being a sports team owner. You know, especially, well, we actually took 2 losses today. We took Warcraft and we took Starcraft. If you take a game like Starcraft, we've done insanely well this year. We've won GSL, we've won SSL, we've won like just oodles and oodles of great placements to the point where it's almost inarguable that we are the best team in StarCraft. And that in and of itself is something that I guess balances a bit, because the fact that StarCraft's a game where BlizzCon isn't the one and only. There's a lot of great achievements throughout the year. If you were to balance that against something like LCS, where it's not, right, where winning either EU LCS finals and or Worlds are so much more impactful and they're so much more important, then that does, you know, like I will say our loss to G2 in the first round of playoffs in the summer was way more devastating, because that was our moment of achievement. It came down to a single play. We were about to knock off the champions and move on and probably win the whole thing if that happens, and because they go on to win the whole thing, and we probably could have beaten anybody else. So I think it depends on the game, it depends on the structure. I am very, very invested emotionally, like I think most owners. I always like to say that the thing about being an owner is the highs are crazy, crazy, crazy higher, and the lows are crazy, crazy, crazy lower. So I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. When the Spurs lose, I'm low. When the Spurs win, I'm high. When Splyce loses, I'm really low. When Splyce wins, I'm really high. Yeah. But the last thing I'll say to wrap it up is that by nature of my position, I don't have the luxury of just moping and doping. I have to make the effort because I have 60 employees who look to me to lead the business. So.
Right. Kind of taking a bit of a different approach. Like I know that you've dealt with some losses today, but how did you do in terms of expectations overall? Were you heading into today with the expectation that, like, I'm sure it's always your goal for your players to win, but I know for TY, I mean, no one really saw him making it that deep in the bracket. What were your personal expectations as CEO for BlizzCon?
Well, so I would say that I disagree with that TY thing. That's just because he wasn't necessarily hot right now, but this is a player who's won plenty of events, beat plenty of top players. Hell, he beat Stats to win IEM when Stats was getting really hot, right? So this is a player that can turn it on when necessary, and also turn it on when things are really in not a great spot, right? Like if you were in that IEM finals, like it could have gone either way, really, really could have. Yeah. I remember feeling pretty confident we were going to win it, and this is before we signed TY, you know? I think coming into this, we definitely expected both Stats and TY to do really, really well. Obviously, Stats is on the cusp of maybe the greatest year in StarCraft history to win GSL and SSL and BlizzCon, and then doesn't make it through the group stage, which was pretty devastating. Warcraft, we had an incredibly talented team full of veterans that have just been to BlizzCon a million times and things like that. Novos is a legend. He's one of the greatest of all time. So we did have high expectations. You're right. There's plenty of times like we went to Worlds in 2016. We did not expect to win Worlds in League of Legends, right? Like that would be absurd for a team of rookies to go in. We're going to beat Faker and SK Telecom, right? Like I didn't have that expectation. But I do think coming to BlizzCon, we did have expectations of being able to be extremely competitive and fight for either title.
So I want to kind of change gears a little bit. It's a little ironic because we're at BlizzCon, and I'm pretty sure the World Cup is going on right now, but I want to talk a bit about Paladins.
Okay.
It was a pretty big announcement, the Paladins Premier League, and as WESA, you guys became involved. What grew, or excuse me, what drew you to Paladins as an individual owner and then as the conglomerate of WESA, the board? What made that title appealing to you?
So we joined around the time that things were ramping up, so we weren't part of the initial like picking that title, moving forward that title. So just to be completely honest, I will say that I know that a big part of it was having a great publisher in Hi-Rez. Like that was really important, as we knew who we were working with, and they've obviously had such great success with Smite. So you weren't going in with some unknown publisher who is throwing as a marketing effort. Like Hi-Rez does real esports, we'll call it, right? Like where they actually care about the community and they're actually growing it. It isn't just like throw money at it, make esports, you know? For us at Splyce, we, number one, if you take the game out of it itself, see it's a great opportunity for working with a great publisher to establish an esports league and create that really good dynamic of platform publisher teams, which has never happened before, right? But if specifically the game Paladins itself, I think number one, for a game that isn't a juggernaut of a game yet, it has an incredible amount of early momentum, player base wise. And the player base is very much grown from an organic way, right? Like it didn't come from Blizzard or Riot or Activision or someone that's a juggernaut where it's just going to get massive player base because of the massive fandom. I mean, I don't particularly care one way or the other about Overwatch, but a big part of Overwatch was the fact that it was released by Blizzard, and I am also one of those Blizzard fanboys. You know, like whatever they put out, we're going to try it, we're going to play it, whatever. You didn't have that, and yet it still grew this tremendous audience of players. The last thing I'll say is that I think that it was really cool to see a game in that genre of, I guess we're calling it like the team-based FPS, or however you want to describe it, the crossover FPS and MOBA, where it's, to me, when I watched it, it has, it's like a touch slower and less crazy graphics, which people love that about playing Overwatch, but I find it incredibly hard to watch in that way. I found Paladins far more watchable. And at the end of the day, having community behind a game, so it came up organically, and having a game that feels more watchable, those are much more attractive to me than games that are, you know, forced into being esports.
I was happy to see you involved. I love both of them. I love team shooters in general. So I'm glad that you're there. I thought that it was interesting, the statements that were released with that announcement, and maybe you can tell me if I'm reading too far in, but the statement from WESA talked about how Hi-Rez has like the history of supporting endemics, and this is around the time when the controversy around OWL and how non-supportive of endemics that organization might be was really hot in the Overwatch community. Was that purposeful in any way? Like, were you trying to send a message as WESA there?
I don't think so. I think it was just more about the fact that it's, you know, core beliefs. What we all as team owners believe about is that esports comes from the community, and that since the very first time we're doing this, we were going to do it with somebody that was the right fit for community, right? I can tell you that I could, now yes, we're newer WESA members, so I can't speak for everybody, but the way part of why we joined WESA is because I believe we would never have made our first dive in this marketing partnership, right? Like some game where we were paying pay to feed to market their game and they didn't give a crap about community. Like that just wouldn't fly. And I think that is really at the core of every esports owner in WESA, is that we're all ground up built teams, right? We're all like passion owners who did this because we love it. We have no interest in like that kind of I guess the point is this: we all have a really heavy interest in esports thriving overall, right? And the community is what makes it thrive.
Speaking of that vested interest in the community thriving overall, you guys are partnered with the Bruins. That was a huge story when that hit. And it kind of seemed like it was a little tied into the Overwatch stuff because it was, again, around the time when all that was really happening. And, of course, you're not involved in the Overwatch League now. Yep. So can you tell us a little bit about what Splyce and the Bruins organization kind of might be having planned for esports, what kind of integration we might see there?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're partner with Delaware North, which owns the TD Garden, and their chairman owns the Bruins. So it's a little less direct, but it is still very direct in that we're the only esports team in the world that owns our own arena, essentially. I mean, our investors do. So we've done a lot of it. 2017, we called kind of testing. We tested things like our merchandise is in the pro shop, and we did activations at games, and we did events, filmed content in the arena. We went out to their other properties because Delaware North owns a ton of properties, and did things out there. We've worked with their marketing teams and their casinos, you name it, on just trying things out to figure out what works and what doesn't, and learn, okay, that doesn't, that works, or that could work but needs some changing. Going into 2018, I think that we've established that we do believe there's a strong opportunity around not just Boston but the Northeast as a whole. And establishing ourselves as a very, from the North America perspective anyways, the Northeastern company. We're headquarters in Rochester, Delaware North is in Buffalo, and the TD Garden is in Boston. You've already got a nice stretch of land in there. But beyond that, New England always kind of goes together, so you have that. And really areas like Ohio and Pennsylvania, there are going to be areas where similar type of fans, similar type of people living in those towns, and I think there's a great opportunity for us to access those fans. A big part of that is what we're doing locally and with what we call them the rec centers, which is we're opening the first one in Rochester. We think by the end of this year, we're just waiting for some permitting from the town in Rochester, where you can go and watch Splyce Esports in person at a location, and I think that in-person connection is going to help a lot of that. Looking into 2018, we're still early in our stages of planning of how do we turn Boston into our performance center, because we still think that there will be a main place where performance is drawn out of in North America. Something similar in Europe as well, though we're just less far along with that, I'd say. But yes, plans for 2018 will be much further along in the idea of not just the Bruins or not just TD Garden, but Boston as a whole being this focal hub of a larger northeastern play for Splyce.
I want to cap things off with a Starcraft specific question because I'm mostly a Starcraft guy. It's mostly what I'm known for. You have a lot of faith in Starcraft 2. I've seen you talk on Twitter maybe like a month ago. You had some stuff to say in response to some other people, I think. I've seen you say favorable things about StarCraft 2 in the past, and that's kind of non-traditional at this point. A lot of people have the viewpoint of StarCraft being old and tired and everything to that effect, right? But what makes you have so much faith in StarCraft 2? And I mean, obviously there were big announcements this weekend, but can you speak to that a little bit?
So I have a few answers to that question. The first one's pretty easy in that saying not every esport has to be League of Legends in the Olympic Stadium this weekend we all saw. Like, that isn't the whole thing. If you look at traditional sports, just because golf isn't the NFL doesn't mean that golf doesn't exist, right? There's a very passionate fan base behind golf. I'm not a fan of golf, but I have some of my best friends love golf and watch it every single week. And that doesn't make it not a key part of the sports ecosystem. But the second thing I'll say is that there's a famous kind of saying. So we were a tech company before we were a pro team, and so we studied a lot of what tech people learn to grow companies. A lot of the learnings that have been done because people failed, right? Is where you learn the most. And one of the very important key teachings in the tech world is instead of focusing on getting 1 million people that sort of like your product, find 1,000 that are incredibly passionate, that love it, that can't live without it. And StarCraft is full of that. Like, StarCraft fans watch every single $200 tournament. They talk about it every day on the forums. They're on Reddit nonstop. They're on Twitter. Like, they love their game. I'd rather have 1,000 absolutely passionate StarCraft fans than 10 million, I sort of care, fans in another game. When we first, it's interesting, tied back to your Boston question, when we first announced we were with Boston, on Reddit and Twitter, I got two major types of responses. Awesome, I'm a Bruins fan, and/or I'm from Boston, I now have a team, or fuck you, I hate you because I hate the Boston area or hate Boston sports, whatever, and now I hate Splyce. And I like both responses because I don't care. I don't want you in the middle, I don't care. I want you either to vehemently hate us or or passionately love us. Right. So that's why, to me, you have great publisher support, you have a fantastic game, you have incredible personalities. I mean, look at the casting talent in StarCraft alone, which many games don't have, and then you have just this vibrant collective of people that love the game, and as long as that exists, the game's worth investing in.
Your StarCraft presence is really Korean-based. Is there any intention to expand into WCS circuit at all, in NAU or beyond?
This is going to give me a lot of hate, but when North America proves that they're worth the top of talent. Because honestly, this is just like in League of Legends. We're in Europe because I like winning. And we kick the crap out of North America typically in League of Legends. So, you know, part of what got us in Starcraft was the opportunity to get elite S-tier talent. And that's a very important thing for us at Splyce is we don't want to enter a game and be decent. We want to contend for titles. I mean, you've seen that this year. We've won multiple titles. It's nothing against North America. I love things like what Neeb has done this year, for example. As much as it sucks that Special beat our players, that was so cool to see. But until we see consistency and S-tier performance out of folks in North America or Europe, it's just not going to be for us because we want to be an S-tier organization.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you have any final closing thoughts, then now's your time, I guess.
Just to the StarCraft fans out there, I know it was only year one for us, and a lot of people, we got the initial, who are these guys? Are they here to screw over our StarCraft players? I think hopefully you'll see by now that was not the case. We had a great year with Solar and Stats and TY, and we're really looking forward to continuing that. We have a lot of great plans on how to support them even better out in Korea. We're talking about like what can we do in Korea itself to help support them, and that's an ongoing conversation. We're talking more and more about how we can grow their brands, how we can do more to make them, to give them the resources they need to be superstars, because that's what they are.